Hello, everyone, and welcome to This Week in Hospitality Marketing, show number 508. And welcome to the Netherlands, Almere, the Netherlands, actually, in our continuing travel adventures that we have. I'm your host, Lauren Gray. Thanks so much for joining us. Um, been knee deep into some mathematics this week, in spite of the fact we are traveling and so forth. Been working on a better answer than what seems to be discussed in the realm of revenue management and junk fees or resort fees. Now, for all of you that have watched me on the show over the course of time, you know that I am a huge not fan of any fees whatsoever. I've had to live through when the whole concept of resort fees or amenity fees were created, when they were first introduced as a way of supplementing lost revenue streams like phones being used in the rooms and so forth. And then when gas prices went crazy, there was the fuel charge that we tried to toss in and we leave it way too long and so forth. And then the way that we have as an industry gotten complacent and greedy when it comes to these fees that we just add to it. And some of the better examples of how silly they are is things like included in the resort fee is usage of our complimentary Wi-Fi. If it's a complimentary Wi-Fi, why do we have to pay a resort fee? They don't even bother to take out the crappy language to even try to hide the fact that they're only adding another fee on it because they don't want to go over and broadcast a larger rate that might be, at first glance, much higher than the competitors. Since everybody's doing this, then everybody thinks that they're getting sneaky with, oh, it's only $150 room fee. But when you add resort fees and other fees, parking fees, and whatever other fees, I find it where, then all of a sudden it's $250 or $200 or whatever it is. Obviously, there is no, from the revenue management side, all of it still gets taxed. At first, it didn't. It was a fee that wasn't getting necessarily directly taxed under the bed tax. And then in some places, they still get around some of the bed taxing fees to that. But now that's gotten, municipalities have gotten smarter to that. And they have applied that all of the fees associated with the room rental must be applied to the bed tax. So that benefit really diminished and so forth. Why I'm bringing all this up? As laws have changed, I mean, the FCC had their law change for the junk fee requirements, and you see now on Meta, especially Meta Search, especially not Meta. Sorry, with the name change, it always means I have to be very distinctive about saying Meta Search rather than Meta, as in previously what was used to be Facebook. In Meta Search, you still see that there's these price comparison issues where the OTAs are on online travel agencies like Expedia, Booking.com, and so forth, are showing different fees than what the hotel is showing until you get into the system, and then you see the fees reapplied and so forth. So there's been this junk fee issue, whether it was in California, whether you had to show the fees. Google has been demanding that they have to be in compliance with the California rules, regardless if it's actually just traffic that's coming out of California and so forth. But what's been happening is most of the time you talk to revenue managers, and revenue managers reflective of ownerships and management companies, is that there is a death grip on these resort fees. They want to keep them. They want to maintain them at all costs, even to the detriment of guest reviews, lifetime value with guests. The perception is that if you do an all-in-one fee and omit the resort fees, like raise your rates, and they do it in a very simplistic way to over dramatize it. Well, if we took the resort fees and just put them into the ADR, then people wouldn't want to buy it from us because our competitors wouldn't do it. So until they do it, we're not doing it. And the competitors are like, until you do it, we're not doing it. So nobody does it. Anyway, nobody's really applied math to it. Not anybody's really looked at it and say, how can we better solve this? We do have to have a transparency with the new junk law fee. It's not that new. It's actually been in effect for a few months, a year almost. Yeah, almost. Um, where you have to show what fees you're applying to a room up front. And ask anybody. Actually, truly, genuinely, even the people that travel that want these fees, they don't like it when they travel that they have to see all these other fees added to the price that enticed them, the marketing price that was involved. And then you see all these fees that are there. For what? Why don't you just tell me the room is $200 instead of $150 with a $50 resort fee? then I can make an honest appraisal of whether I think the room is worth that much money. What it does is it wastes a lot of user time, them having to get into your book engine to see what the fees are. They don't, even though you have them displayed in front on the booking fee, it still has all these other explanations to what they are. And that just is annoying and bad guest experience for everybody. But as an industry, we want to hang on to these resort fees. So when you have realistic discussion with revenue managers who, again, reflect management companies and ownerships, is their answer, and I'm mind numbing to think of this, is that if we're going to get hit with all these extra commission costs and so forth, with OTAs and so forth, that we just raise the resort fee even more. That's great. That's great. No consideration for the user. Let's just keep raising the fees, so we won't touch the rate. So people will still see the 150, but then they'll just see a $70 resort fee instead of a $50 one. And then now the user has to do the math and see if that's a price they want to pay. So I've been in the middle of conversations about this, and usually the stalwartness from the revenue managers, owners, and management groups is this is best for our bottom line, or actually truly top line flow through. It nets better on the bottom line because these are just fees that are tacked on. They're not relevant to the actual costing of the room. They're not relevant to hard costs or whatever. It's just a great flow through number that they get to add for themselves. One of the other arguments that ownerships put together is that if you were to raise the room rate, okay, and not have it as a resort fee, then you would have to pay the additional commission to OTAs that would sell the room at those rates. So, long way of getting to our topic today is resort fees versus a flat rate strategy and better ADR and occupancy. Doing the math. We're going to try to do some math to this, okay? We're going to talk about what is the pros and cons of both sides of the conversation. Now, this is a nascent conversation, really working on a calculator right now. I already have a formula that works. Now I'm trying to turn it into being a calculator. People can go in and punch it in and say, what would I need to do if, by putting in their gross revenues, occupancies, ADRs, and seeing what incrementalities they would have to change. And we'll get into the details. So first, the reasons for keeping the fees. We've already hit a few of these. The OTA commission is not getting applied. Okay, if I keep the resort fees separate from my room rate, I don't have to pay OTA commissions on the fees because the OTA can only sell my room rate, and that's what I pay their commission rate on, the contracted commission rate on, and I still get to keep a much more pure amount of money from the resort fees. Big, huge issue for revenue managers. It's a mantra for them. Owners, the same thing. The second thing that keeps everyone wanting to keep the fees, incremental revenue value. Again, the cleaner the money that flows through, you're not paying commissions from OTAs, as I mentioned, but I guess you're still paying taxes and so forth. But it's just really a tacked on amount of money that's unassigned to directly the actual room rate. Even though you're applying it as a room rate value, you're not applying it in your P&L that way. There's separate, nice cash flow. Okay. And the perception that it gives that you're offering a lower room rate before they discover that you're tacking on all these extra fees, resort fees and what have you. Okay, so the perception is, oh, it's only $150 room rate. Yes, before you have to apply the mandatory, not getting around it, fees of 50 or 70 or whatever amount you add to it, which is really making it a $200 or $220 room rate. So those are the reasons that you usually see floating around as to why revenue managers, owners, and management companies are adamant about wanting to keep these resort fees as long as they can, even to the point of sounding ridiculous by increasing the resort fees just to keep the margins in their pocket. So let's talk about the reasons why it would be great for dumping it. One, easier junk fee compliance. You literally have nothing to hide. You don't have to say our rate's 150. Now here's all the breakdowns of all the extra fees we're applying to it, which disappoints the purchase idea of the user when they start adding that up and realizing it's really a $200 resort fee, keeping with our examples. You don't have to worry about that. Here's my rate. Okay. You get to even advertise it that way. Okay. It's a one true rate. This is our rate. There's no fees. There's no hidden fees. There's no additional fees. Of course, there's taxes. We can't change from taxes. Taxes will be there. But we're not adding any other fees to it. We'll get back to that one a little bit more in just a couple of minutes. The other is that when you're in comparison to other markets, OTAs in particular and so forth, you compare better because your fee is inclusively everything up front. People can make an immediate decision. Now, there's two sides to that conversation. Okay. One is that revenue managers go, no, that's where you fail because you're going to have a $200 rate and everybody else is going to show a 159 rate. Okay. And you're going to lose that initial click through interest because they're going to think that the hotel is trying to charge more than what other places can sell it for. That's where your marketing strategy comes in. Again, we'll talk about that in a second. So, yes, there's a point that when you're going to make it a one true rate, and it is going to be higher than your competitors initially, because competitors are going to keep doing what they're doing with the resort fees. We have a 150 rate, but we have all these extra fees we get to tell you about later. Ours is a $200 rate, no extra fees, talking about it later. Okay. That comes to marketing message. We'll get to that. And where you're talking about an additional OTA commission cost by now having a larger room rate where you have to pay more commission costs, we're going to talk about that by the math numbers as to where that is a moot argument for keeping the fee and a strong argument for losing the fee. So we'll get to that. The other things that are really great about the dumping the resort fee, given current economics, current potential demand shifts that we're going to be facing due to the things going on, um, going back in old ways, everybody remembers the first person that does something. Nobody remembers the last person that does the thing. They finally acquiesce to what everybody else has already done. Being a trendsetter, being first into market with a new market message, like dropping resort fees, like dropping all these extra hidden things, okay, gives you an advantage in marketing message, in the communication that you're doing with marketing. It gives you the lead opportunity to be one of the early, if not the first in your market to say, we're done. We did these fees because they covered extra costs of things that were associated, blah, blah, blah. Not that anybody's going to listen to your explanations. It's just, we're not doing them anymore. We are charging a true room rate. This is what it costs to be here. We're not saying that by paying an extra fee, you get to use a fitness center that you should be already able to use anyway, or having access to our free Wi-Fi, paying for what you already get free. There's other ways to discuss the ability to absorb the changes in prices. Like I said, we'll get to the math. So you get to be first at doing that. Okay. The second of it is that the impact of that happening immediately has a positive effect on your guest reviews, your guest perception. Hey, this hotel, it was a relief. I got to see the rate. At first, it was in comparison to other rates that seemed higher than them until I realized they weren't adding anything to it. That was the rate. It was plain and simple. Here's your rate plus tax. Boom, we're done. Okay. Way better than oh shit, that's a 150 rate, but the resort fee, but then there's taxes on both of those. And I don't know how much more of that. It's perception value. And it improves in the review cycle, which only helps propagate your property ahead of your other competitors, because now the reviews are going to bolster your opportunity on consumer sentiment sites higher than your competitors. So let's talk about some of the math of this. Okay. Now, I tried to make it as simple when I was doing the calculator, the formula that I have right now. The calculator is still coming. When I was doing the formula, what I really was trying to break it down is to understandable numbers. Understandable numbers is I have a resort fee. It's applied per day per room that I have occupied. Okay. So if it's $150 rate and I have a $30 resort fee per day, okay, that's 20% of my rate basically. It is a fee. Okay. But it would make it $180. Now, commission on $150, say at 20%, okay, to an OTA, you're dealing with the fact that that means that it's $30. Okay, at $180, 20% commission would be $38. Let me do the math. Doing it in my head, which is always dangerous. Um, yeah, here we go. Still good. Math stumbled. So I'd be paying a little bit more in commissions to that. Actually, I'd be paying about 4.5%, or well, actually 2% of revenue higher for commission on that. So what about this? Wonder if you were to adjust your ADR to compensate for the margin loss that you would have on not charging the resort fee, The resort fee is a conflated number. Usually you have a number that rounds well or a number that is palatable on its own standalone value. But if you really look at the dollar value that you get from that compared to your tax rate, your bed taxes on it and so forth, there's a marginal capability of lowering that number but maintaining the value that it represents because of the wash on taxes. If you look at just make round numbers, 10% bed tax, then you know that you have probably, if you were to reduce your uh, resort fee by 10%, that means now that your taxable rate for that goes down to 9/10 of what you had been paying before for the higher resort fee. When you add that to your ADR, having, quote, a lower ADR than what you used to have with the resort fee, in contrast to your competitive set, means that in all honesty, you have a lower rate than your competitors, but you're making as much money from it. The math works. The other is when it comes to OTA fees, to adjust for what you have to pay additionally for the OTA to spend with you, you have to look at the channel contribution of what percentage the channel the OTAs are giving for you, which is, let's just say on average, 30 to 40% of your business, transient business, is based in OTA. So you would look at your total transient contribution, 40% of that going towards your OTAs, adjusting what you would have as an increased ADR rate that you would be using, okay? And seeing the increase in commissions, that gives you a dollar amount. Say it's $5,000 more in commissions. How much ADR variance would you have to create at your current occupancy levels to compensate for that 5% that you would then have to apply to your rate to adjust for the extra cost factor to this? And that's really the whole juxtaposition of looking at the math when it comes to resort fees versus a true flat rate. And that is the modifier best suited to apply against the resort fee strategy is ADR variation and occupancy, but ADR primarily. What do I have to adjust my ADR to compensate for the loss of resort fees that I'm familiar with, adjusting it marginally to negatively impact any of the increased tax values that we can lose from it, because I don't have to keep it an exact number anymore. I can keep it in a marginal number. So I can not say it's a $30 resort fee. I can say it's a $27.26 adjustment to my ADR, which might be a 3%. That in itself won't solve the math completely, but if you increase occupancy in combination with your ADR, because you are, one, flat feeing it, two, you are at a lower rate technically than what you had prior to us you having a resort fee, okay? And then you add the ability to market it correctly and well to an audience that understands what you've done for flat feeing your rate. If you increase your occupancy by an X factor, and the X factor is the math part that the calculator right now works on, how much do I have to increase my conversions of current traffic on channels of contribution by a tenth, fractions of a tenth, whatever margin there is? How much more do I have to increase that conversion to literally adjust for having previously done what everybody else did, which was by having a resort fee? Now, I know I've kind of gone around the woods to get to the farm, so let me break all this down for you. We're taking the amount that we make from resort fees, applying it to our occupancy, and getting a number that we know is a dollar amount number. We're then looking at that and saying, based on all of the room sales we have, our occupancies, okay, how best to get that revenue number for the resort fees that we have gotten back. One would be, how do we adjust our ADR incrementally to adjust for not having resort fees, so being more true to what the rate would have been with a resort fee, to now having one rate similar to what we would have cumulatively for that. Bringing it lower than that, though, so we have a better chance of selling. Two, looking at what we would then have to improve as occupancy to reduce the negative impact of what we would be selling for ourselves. Three, look at what we have as OTA channel contribution and understand what monies we would increase by spending for that, which is usually about a 1.4, 1.5% revenue loss, and seeing how much more we need to spend outside of that channel or make out outside of that channel to compensate for the extra fees we'd be paying for the OTA contribution by channel by increasing what our conversions are for everything. The better we can sell what we're doing, even if it's by a tenth better in conversion, is going to be exponentially larger in value than the dollar amount of keeping it the same. If you work out putting in your gross revenue, your gross resort fees, your channel commissions of OTA, what your modified ADR is to compensate for the resort fee loss number, but keep putting it below what that would have been before historically, in comparison to your comp, in comparison to your OTA channel contribution, you would come up with a percentage of what you need for conversion value to make more money than if you had kept your resort fees. And why would I say more money? One, you would be one of the earliest to push the fact that you have one true rate that says, hey, no fees, no nothing. Here's our room rate. Tax gets added. It's part of life. That's it. No more extra fees. Now, I say that, and that's one whole way of doing this. And I've done the numbers on real client relationship stuff to know that we can do this. I will say that there are some properties that you would have to consider how much conversion you'd have to apply. And that might require marketing spend increases. Because some of them, depending upon the resort fees and the current ADR, you would have to lower the cumulative rate pretty hard, even when you're putting in contrast to your room rate plus resort fee is a number. It's usually a large number. When you make that an ADR, that's a scary large number and not often one that's sellable as easily as it would be if it was much marginally less. But if you get too less, you then really have a larger impact of negative revenue from the lost resort fee because you've had to cut back your ADR to be more equitably sellable, far behind what you were getting before by adding resort fees to it. So you have to have a harder adjustment on, because you can't really do it with the ADR, you have to have a harder adjustment in occupancy increase. Occupancy increase is directly related to conversion increases. So you have to have a larger substantive conversion increase. And then there's also properties that have a much larger proportionate OTA dependency, which is not a good thing to do. But places like New York and New York's probably the best example. Just have a heavy OTA dependence because that's a very heavy OTA driven market. And so it's hard to really diminish that far enough back. You're going to get hit with higher commissions for OTAs because of their level of contribution to you. Again, that it's going to be hard to balance out on the independent transient conversion side, those additional fees. But that gives you another number. You add that number of what you're paying in additional conversions to OTA based on your channel contribution to also what you're doing for the resort fees, okay, and your ADR adjustments, it can create large numbers. So some properties do have to have a very aggressive growth in conversion increase to adjust for both of those negative impact factors. The ADR compliance that's not the same as what you were getting with resort fees, and the fact that you have such an heavier than average OTA contribution. Those are two modifying factors that can be against how you would be handling doing non-resort fees and doing one true rate. But it can still do it. It's just going to be much better about being aggressive about it. And this goes to the ability to sell it. Being first in market to offer a one true rate, being the first to go over and show that you're not hiding things or having to confess to things with all these extra fees. And basically, I wouldn't say bait and switch because it's not truly the definition of it, but basically entice and then withdraw. Where you offer at a rate that isn't realistic because it doesn't include all the costs that you're adding to it mandatorily to give you the final fee. That's where this turns into a great marketing trend if you're one of the earlier ones on. The later you join that conversation, the less impact that has for you in the positive sense. But let's talk about other ways to really crack the nut here. We already know that we're dealing with the desire and the need to find sources of revenue that are pure streams. Pure streams mean that there's not as many hands touching it, like commissions and taxes and so forth. And a lot of these can go from upsells, the ability to sell something that isn't offered as part of the standard of what people are getting without it detracting from what people are getting when they're there. You can't say, okay, well, here's your room rate. Okay. We don't have resort fees now, but if you want a hot shower, you're going to have to pay extra for the hot water. Can't do that. Not the way we're going. But take that example and say, of course you have good internet. For most people, they can do their streaming and things like this. But if you really need great internet, business meetings, things that you're doing broadcasting or something from or anything like this, then there is additional cost to having the better internet. Now we've tied some of it, or some brands have tied it to their loyalty programs. Sadly, the difference between what they consider good and great is really just average and mediocre. It's not really a value add. It's kind of a giveaway for just rewarding you for being part of the membership program. But there is one avenue. Membership programs, by signing up, you get extra values to something. If you don't sign up, then you can pay for or extra things. Sometimes there's some great fitness centers that are in destinations, offering that you can go in after hours or scheduled with a trainer or scheduled with a something. Okay. Then yoga classes, workout class, meditation class, something that would be a little extra in value. Yes, there's cost, but there's also value. Um, Menu options or delivery services to your room, delivery services in general, um, reductions in services because you paid to have the increase. For instance, buy $100 food voucher and get 150 in value when you do it. Keeping in mind there's breakage, that maybe 40% of the people don't take the full value that you're offering them, and you get money back, so to speak, in the sense that you didn't have to spend all of that extra to get the enticement for them to purchase it. Breakfast packages, taxi services, parking, great one for that. People can easily see that you have a 20, 30, $40 a day parking fee, but if you prepay parking for the days that you're there, where say it's $20 a day and you're gonna stay there for 3 days, so it would be normally $60. But if you prepay, okay, for the 3 days, and you pay $50, okay, quote, the user saves $10, but they in fact might not have the whole third day they have to use because they have to check out. But to them, it's a savings and worth it rather than the fact they would have probably had to pay the $20 anyway. There's just ways to fractionalize those value propositions without taking away from the value of having a one true rate, but then showing there's extra values of opportunity that can be given for ancillary revenue beyond that. So that's what we're really talking about, is the ability to really have a numerics comparison of what am I making off of resort fees? What could I make, or how could I create the combinations of ADR variation, increased occupancy, which is translated to better conversion advice for transient version, and a control or diminishment of OTA channels to compensate for the additional commission fees I'd be paying for what is being produced in that channel for its channel contribution. Those are the metric pieces in the math puzzle that we have currently working, and they do work persistently well for 70, 80%. I'd say higher than that, but I want to be pessimistic. There are some properties that the impact of how much you'd have to create a value increase on your conversions because of your inability to really push the ADR as high as you could, close enough to what you were getting with resort fees attached to them. And also the fact that you may be on the wrong side of how much OTA contribution is coming your way, and that the extra commissions you would have to pay on the one flat rate that you would be paying the OTAs, which, by the way, just so you know, one of the killers of the OTAs was if you give them the one flat rate, they're going to take the commission increase off it, which is great. But when they try to add their extra fees on it, like they like to, they're going to go out of rate with you because they can't. They have to drop their own fees that they're adding to it, their own quote resort fees or their own Expedia or hotels.com fees, to keep what they're offering in comparison to your direct rate palatable. So you're kind of killing, when you do this, you're going to automatically get some reduction from the channel contribution because they're going to have a rate that's going to be higher than what you can do for your one true rate because they're still trying to add fees on top of theirs. Won't last for long, but it does give you that early adoption value to it. And then the other is, of course, seeing other ways to find sources of revenues for value added propositions, or ways to increase revenues where memberships, there's a free membership, or maybe there's a paid membership. That paid membership gives you even a higher value of something, but that money goes towards a flow through that doesn't have taxations to it, or it doesn't have commissions to it, because it's a membership fee to have additional benefits. And those can be spectrum into discounts that are negotiated with local vendors, services that you provide because they are a purchased membered relationship. That maybe you have an Uber credit or a taxi credit. Um, Meeting room facility fee accesses without any fees attached to it for a certain period of time. Physical trainers being involved with their training facilities, or after hour accesses to things that aren't like, think about Disney After Dark. If you're part of the Disney hotels, you get to stay in the parks longer than the ones that aren't part of the Disney hotel. Same type of thing with golfing. You get to book the late round or the early round, or preference to the prime round in the middle of the day. These things don't take away from the value of a single flat true rate, but they give value to doing more than just that. And that's the mindset that has to get changed. This unrealistic death grip on revenue managers, owners, and management companies demanding that they keep the resort fees at all costs, with the paltry excuses that OTA commissions would go up and we have no way to replace the revenue with ADR because nobody would pay it. There was some conversation, oh, whenever hotels tried to one rate it, their business went down. Says the people that did the survey that didn't want you to drop your resort fees. It's kind of like uh, the tobacco companies doing studies about, is tobacco dangerous for your health? No, no, we didn't find a darn thing. Really? Well, I guess that makes sense, since if we did, then you wouldn't be able to sell us as much stuff. So you didn't look hard enough. Kind of the same mentality. It's like, yeah, no, there's nothing to do with dropping resort fees and having flat rates because it'll hurt your business. Yeah, yeah. Because why? They don't want you to drop resort fees. It's the argument that I made. Anyways, I think we hit it in a very roundabout way in several ways before, but basically what we want to talk about, what we talked about today, was resort fees versus a true flat rate, and bettering your ADR and occupancy, and kind of doing the math to figure that out. Like I said, we have a working calculator now, that a working formula calculator's coming, and I'll send you the link in the show notes about when we get the calculator going, which should be within the next couple of days, which allows you to put in your revenues, your OTA channel contributions, your current ADR, and it'll help figure out what your ADR modification and your resort fee, and what modification could be. Uh, and we're trying to decide whether we're going to add tax numbers in there. It's like, do you know what your bed tax number is? That kind of thing. We don't want to overcomplicate the calculator where you're filling in 15 fields before it'll give you an answer. Really want to keep it to like 5 or 6 that we're asking for. You put it in, it should give you some relatively stick in the sand saying, well, hey, you can modify your ADR by this much, and this will put you below your previous rate with plus resort fee, and also with your contribution that you indicated in your OTA, then the revenue from the extra commissions for that, plus the revenue that you need to compensate for not having period E, means that you have to improve your conversion value by this much to increase your occupancy, which you would have been already put as a number. That's the calculator we're trying to put out there so people can play with it and understand what this really means. So there. Again, I hope that it made sense as to how we're truly objectively trying to look at this from a math perspective, and rather than just it being an opinion perspective or emotional perspective as to we don't want to give up resort fees or what have you. We are in a changing economy, as all of us know, and this is innovative. It's first to market if you do it, if not early enough to market, so that you're still one of the trendsetters that gets the benefit of that extra value to it, as we discussed. And it gives you potentially that fractional variation that allows you to adjust quicker and respond faster for what's going on when it comes to what you're going to be doing for your ADRs and your future demand and occupancies, which you need for conversions. So thank you everyone for watching us live, for all around the world, 209 countries on our TV channel. And for those who are watching us simulcast on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, Twitch, thank you always for watching us live on that. We do rebroadcast the shows 11:30 a.m. London time for EU friends and Mideast, and then also 11:30 Sydney time for our APAC friends. So if you have any questions about what I've discussed, or want to follow up, where I can send you the link directly for our calculator when we get it up in past beta, You can send to Lauren at hospitalitydigitalmarketing.com. I answer each and every email when it comes to the show or the podcast. Oh, and you can also catch the rerun of the show audibly on our radio station, Hospitality Radio. You can go to the website, hospitalityradio.com, and it's lots of stuff on our radio show. We have tons of other podcasts that run at the same times every day from a variety of sources, very great sources to it. And our TV station, we have a website for all of our previous shows. Like I said, we're 10 years plus every week doing the show, regardless of where we are in the world. And all of our shows are there, and all of our podcasts are there as well. So you can go to hospitalitychannel.tv. And if you're a hospitality marketing professional and want to join our peer level club, where you have the chance to collaborate with people at and above and below your skill levels, so we're all doing hospitality marketing, but you have peer level discussions. You can join us at hospitalitymarketing.club. So with that, my name is Lauren Gray. I thank you for the privilege of your time.